They were household names, actors, musicians, stars who lived in the public eye. Then, without warning, they vanished. No goodbye, no trace, no explanation. Join us as we discover these chilling, unsolved disappearances of celebrities whose fates remain a mystery to this day. For years, Shelley Miscavige was dubbed the First Lady of Scientology. But being the wife of Scientology leader David Miscavige turned out to be a dangerous position. Once a prominent figure within the organization, Shelley vanished from public view in 2007, sparking speculation, concern, and repeated demands for answers. Despite all attempts to find the truth, the circumstances surrounding her disappearance remain murky, leaving behind a trail of unresolved questions. Shelley Miscavige, born Michelle Diane Barnett on January 18, 1961, in Dallas, Texas, was immersed in the Church of Scientology from a young age. Her mother, Mary Florence Fike Barnett, was a devoted Scientologist before leaving the church, taking confidential materials with her and joining a rival sect, which would later stain her reputation within the church and strain familial ties. As for Shelley, she joined the Sea Org, the elite management group within Scientology, at just 12 years old. In 1982, at the age of 21, Shelley married 22-year-old David Miscavige, rising rapidly within the inner ranks of the church. She acted as David's assistant and played a critical role in managing Scientology's relationship with high-profile figures like Tom Cruise. Shelley was reportedly instrumental in overseeing the auditing and purification programs of Cruise's partners, and even allegedly helped orchestrate a search to find him a new partner after his breakup with Penelope Cruz. However, cracks began to show in 2006. After returning early from a trip aboard Scientology's ship, Shelley made executive decisions in her husband's absence, an act considered a breach of protocol. When David returned, witnesses reported a change in her demeanor. She appeared subdued, anxious, and withdrawn. Around this time, she privately asked Scientology spokesperson Mike Rinder if her husband was still wearing his wedding ring, a moment of vulnerability that hinted at deeper unrest. Soon after, Shelley disappeared from all public engagements. The last sighting of Shelley Miscavige was on August 1, 2007, when she was escorted to the funeral of her 77-year-old father, Maurice Elliott Barnett. Those who saw her noted she was accompanied closely by a handler and no longer held the influential role she once occupied. Former Scientologist Mark Headley alleged that when another member approached Shelley in private, she responded cryptically, admitting she had made a grave mistake and could no longer help. That last appearance was the beginning of a prolonged and troubling silence. As years passed, Shelley's absence became more noticeable, especially among former members and critics of the church. In 2013, 6 years after Shelley's final public appearance, actress and former Scientologist Leah Remini filed a missing person report with the Los Angeles Police Department. The decision was spurred in part by Shelley's absence from Tom Cruise and Katie Holmes' high-profile wedding in 2006, where her husband had served as best man. Remini's questions about Shelley were reportedly met with hostility, and she later claimed she was subjected to intense disciplinary measures, including long hours of interrogation and reprogramming at a church facility in Clearwater, Florida. The Los Angeles Police Department closed the missing person investigation within hours of Remini's filing, stating that they had met with Shelley in person and concluded she was alive and safe. However, they offered no details about the circumstances of that meeting. When pressed, authorities stated that Shelley did not want to communicate further. As of 2023, the Church of Scientology has not issued any additional comment on her whereabouts, insisting only that she is a private person engaged in church work. Despite the Los Angeles Police Department's conclusion, suspicion remains. Several former Sea Org members have expressed concern that Shelley is being held at a secure and remote Scientology compound near Running Springs, California, operated by the Church of Spiritual Technology. Though no evidence has been made public to substantiate these claims, the continued secrecy fuels speculation. The Church has dismissed such assertions and challenged the credibility of those making them. Though legally classified as neither missing nor in danger, Shelley Miscavige has not been seen or heard from publicly in nearly 2 decades. The brief appearance at her father's funeral in 2007 remains the final verified image of a woman once central to one of the world's most controversial religious organizations. For those who knew her or followed her story, the silence surrounding her fate remains deeply unsettling, an enduring mystery cloaked in the shadows of total secrecy. Christina "Licorice" McKechnie was once a recognizable figure in the world of 1960s folk music, her voice and presence etched into the history of one of the era's most unconventional bands. But what began as a life of poetic promise and musical experimentation eventually faded into mystery, ending with a disappearance that has remained unresolved for decades. Licorice was born in Edinburgh, Scotland, in 1945. Her early years are largely undocumented, but her public journey began in Edinburgh's folk club scene, where she read her poetry and mingled with musicians. In her teens, she left home with the intention of marrying renowned Scottish folk guitarist Bert Jansch. But the marriage never occurred as Jansch left for Morocco, and Licorice found herself drawn into the orbit of another musician, Robin Williamson. This marked the beginning of her deep connection with the countercultural folk scene, and by the late 1960s, she had become a member of the Incredible String Band, initially contributing backing vocals on the group's 1967 album, The 5,000 Spirits or The Layers of the Onion. Licorice quickly evolved into a central figure within the band. She provided vocals, percussion, and a unique energy to their psychedelic folk sound. The band, including Licorice, performed at Woodstock in 1969, though their slot was postponed due to rain, and their absence from the festival film ultimately limited their exposure. Despite this, they were among a lineup that included names like Joni Mitchell and Leonard Cohen, and for a time, the band maintained a strong presence within the countercultural music scene. Licorice's personal and professional partnership with Williamson ended in the early 1970s, and by 1972 she left the band altogether. Over the next few years, she remained active in the musical scene, appearing at a Scientology concert in 1974 and later performing with the Silver Moon Band in California. She married fellow musician Brian Lambert, though their marriage ended in divorce. Her last known recording appearance was in 1977 on Williamson's album Journey's Edge, where she was credited as Licky Lambert, before she joined Woody Woodmansey's short-lived rock band, U-Boat. After this period, information about her life becomes scarce. It's believed she resided in various parts of California and Arizona, including Los Angeles and Sacramento. By 1986, she returned briefly to Edinburgh to visit family. According to her sister, the last direct contact came in 1990, when Licorice was reportedly recovering from surgery in Sacramento. The trail grows colder after that, though reports, some credible, others speculative, claim she was last seen hitchhiking through the Arizona desert in 1987. No confirmed sightings have emerged since. Theories about her fate vary widely. Some suggest she may have succumbed to the dangers of desert travel or faced harm while hitchhiking alone. Others speculate her disappearance may have had some connection to past affiliations, including Scientology, though no evidence supports this. Rumors of family-hired private investigators yielded no results, and occasional online claims that she was located in a small city in the United States remain unverified. Former bandmate Rose Simpson voiced a sentiment shared by many, that there's a real possibility Licorice may no longer be alive. Despite the speculation and mystery, there has been no closure. Licorice McKechnie's disappearance remains unresolved, her voice, once heard on folk records and festival stages, now only echoing through questions without answers. Whether she chose a life of solitude or met a darker fate, the truth might never surface. The sudden and unexplained disappearance of actress Marcela Basteri has remained one of Latin America's most unsettling, unresolved mysteries. Over 3 decades later, the case continues to stir speculation, grief, and public intrigue, particularly as her son, the renowned Mexican singer Luis Miguel, occasionally pays tribute to her memory, keeping alive the unanswered question, what really happened to Marcela? Marcela Basteri was born in 1946 in the province of Massa Carrara, Italy. She married Luis Gallego Sanchez, better known as Luisito Rey, a Spanish singer who never achieved the fame he longed for through his own talent. Together, They had 3 sons: Luis Miguel, who would go on to become one of the most successful Latin pop stars in history, Alejandro, and Sergio. Marcela was not just the wife of a musician or the mother of a future icon. She was also an actress, remembered for her grace and artistic presence. But behind the seemingly perfect facade of their family was a life fraught with turbulence, especially in her increasingly toxic relationship with Luisito. Accounts from close relatives and journalists painted a disturbing picture of Marcela's final years. She reportedly endured escalating abuse from her husband, whose violent behavior, drug addiction, and obsession with Luis Miguel's career grew more extreme over time. As his ambition intensified, Luisito allegedly forced Marcela into demeaning acts, including pressuring her to sleep with a high-ranking Mexican police official to secure opportunities for their son. These experiences, compounded by her husband's manipulation and erratic behavior, pushed her to the brink. By 1986, Marcela had become visibly distressed. When she visited her Aunt Adua in Italy, she was described as emaciated and shaken. She allegedly confided that she feared for her life and possessed documents exposing Luisito's suspicious financial dealings, which she believed could offer some form of protection. Shortly after this visit, Marcela vanished. The last confirmed sighting of Marcela was at an Italian airport that same year, reportedly while traveling with her youngest son, Sergio. From that moment on, her trail went cold. Conflicting reports muddied the timeline. Some said she was last seen at a Luis Miguel concert in Argentina in 1985, while others pointed to the Italian airport encounter. Her final communications were a few phone calls to relatives, after which all contact ceased. Luisito, who died in 1992, offered various explanations, ranging from claims that she had fled with a lover to vague denials of any wrongdoing, but he never provided proof or clarity. Luis Miguel never visited his father on his deathbed, and his public comments have remained restrained, only hinting at the pain her absence caused. Over the years, numerous theories emerged. Some believed Marcela had been institutionalized in a psychiatric facility in Italy. Others were convinced Luisito had killed her. Actor Andres Garcia and Marcela's own aunt have publicly suggested foul play, naming Luisito as the likely culprit. The release of a television series depicting Luis Miguel's life reignited interest in the mystery, portraying dramatized efforts by Luis Miguel to locate his mother across Europe and confront those who might hold answers. Despite extensive searches, including personal investigations by Luis Miguel himself, no conclusive evidence has ever been found. In recent years, rumors periodically resurfaced, such as mistaken identity claims involving a homeless woman in Argentina, only to be debunked. And yet, the void left by Marcela's disappearance remains. On Mother's Day in 2023, Luis Miguel shared a silent tribute on social media, an old photo of him and Marcela smiling together. The image, posted without a caption, spoke volumes, drawing hundreds of thousands of reactions from fans and family alike. Marcela Basteri would be in her late 70s today. Her fate remains one of Latin music's most tragic enigmas, shadowing the immense success of her son and leaving behind a legacy not only of beauty and talent, but of heartbreak and unanswered questions. In October 2016, the sudden disappearance of renowned drummer Joe Cripps sent shockwaves through the music communities of Little Rock, Arkansas, and Denton, Texas. Though years have passed, the circumstances surrounding his vanishing remain elusive, marked only by unsettling clues and growing concern among family, friends, and fellow musicians. Joe Cripps had spent decades carving out a name for himself in the world of music. He was best known for his time with Brave Combo, a Denton-based Grammy Award-winning polka band with a vibrant, unconventional sound. Joe, who originally hailed from Little Rock, moved to Denton in the 1980s, where he became deeply embedded in its music scene. He would often join Brave Combo on stage before officially replacing their drummer in the early 1990s, eventually becoming a full partner in the band. During his years with Brave Combo, the group secured Grammy wins in 1999 and 2004, with Joe's contributions forming an essential part of their success. Though he stepped away from the band in 1999, Joe's musical legacy continued to influence the community. After returning to Little Rock in 2015, he continued performing at local clubs and stayed in touch with the Denton scene, maintaining a presence that extended far beyond his hometown. Joe, who was 51 years old at the time, was last seen on the night of October 19, 2016 at Whitewater Tavern, a well-known bar in Little Rock where he was a familiar face. Reports confirmed he had been drinking and was eventually cut off by the bartender. Shortly after, he used his phone to call a taxi and exited the establishment. No one could confirm whether he ever entered a cab, and that would be the last known sighting of him. 2 days later, on October 21st, he was scheduled to perform a local gig, a commitment he failed to keep. This uncharacteristic absence raised immediate red flags among his bandmates, prompting a call to his brother, James Cripps, who soon filed a missing persons report. James found Joe's blood pressure medication, drumsticks, and a bag of personal items still in his apartment, things he wouldn't have left behind if he intended to leave town. Even his drum equipment remained untouched, further deepening the mystery. Local authorities launched a search, scouring hospitals, rehabilitation centers, and even morgues, but found no trace. Joe's vehicle wasn't operational at the time, ruling out the possibility of him having driven off. His social media, once regularly updated, had gone silent. As the days passed with no leads, police began considering the possibility of foul play or a medical emergency, though neither theory yielded results. His family, desperate for answers, took it upon themselves to retrace his steps. Among those who searched was Bubba Hernandez, Joe's former bandmate and brave combo, who traveled to Little Rock to visit the church Joe had once invited him to. Bubba walked the streets Joe had walked, spoke with bar staff, and attended the services Joe frequented, hoping to glean any information that could help uncover what had happened. As time wore on, support poured in from both Arkansas and Texas. Joe's story spread quickly on social media, with friends and former classmates expressing their hopes for his safe return. In Denton, the music community honored his legacy with birthday celebrations and live performances. In January, the city even declared January 5th as Joe Cripps Day, ensuring his presence lived on in the hearts of those he'd inspired. During these gatherings, friends and musicians performed songs, remembered his laughter, and ultimately announced the formation of the Joe Cripps Foundation, a nonprofit aimed at supporting aspiring percussionists, a cause that reflected Joe's life and passions. Despite the tributes and investigations, Joe Cripps remains missing. What happened that night after he left the Whitewater Tavern remains a haunting question for those who knew and loved him. His absence left a profound silence in two cities that once took immense joy in his rhythm. It was Christmas Day in 1944, when the world learned that one of its most celebrated musicians had vanished without a trace. Glenn Miller, the famed big band leader turned Army officer, had boarded a military aircraft en route to Paris, a trip he had long anticipated in support of the war effort. But as soldiers gathered around radios and families scanned headlines, the unthinkable became clear. The man who had brought music and morale to millions was missing, and no one knew where or why. Born Alton Glenn Miller in Clarinda, Iowa on March 1, 1904, Glenn was drawn to music from an early age. During his high school years, his interest in dance band music grew so strong that he began performing with classmates, often prioritizing gigs over school events, even missing his own graduation to play out of town. By 1921, he was set on becoming a professional musician. Over the next 2 decades, his dedication paid off, and by 1939, Glenn Miller and his orchestra had become the most successful band in the country. His timeless hits like In the Mood and Chattanooga Choo Choo defined the swing era and earned him the first ever gold record. Yet, at the peak of his fame, he chose a different path, trading his baton for a military uniform. In 1942, Glenn enlisted in the United States Army Air Forces, driven by a desire to serve and uplift troops with music. Commissioned as a captain, he created the Army Air Forces Band, later known as the Major Glenn Miller Army Air Forces Orchestra, which blended classical strings with the big band sound. His mission was clear: to boost the morale of soldiers scattered across Europe. The workload was grueling with long days of travel, recordings, and performances, yet Glenn never relented. His efforts made the band a symbol of home and hope during a time of global chaos. On December 12, 1944, the orchestra completed its final recordings in England and prepared to move to newly liberated Paris. Glenn, eager to arrive ahead of his unit and finalize arrangements, was booked on an official flight for December 14th, which was canceled due to poor weather. Impatient and increasingly anxious, he learned that Lieutenant Colonel Norman Bessel was flying to France the following day aboard a small Noorduyn UC-64A Norseman aircraft piloted by Flight Officer John Morgan. Glenn accepted an invitation to join them, even though the flight wasn't authorized for him, and he didn't report his decision to his superiors. By 1355, on December 15, 1944, the plane was airborne and never seen again. Unknown to military leadership, Glenn had boarded a non-scheduled flight, and when he failed to arrive in Paris, no immediate alarm was raised. The very next day, the Battle of the Bulge erupted in Belgium, further delaying awareness of the disappearance. It wasn't until December 18th that officials realized the aircraft was missing. Major General Orville Anderson, whose wife was Glenn's cousin, ordered a formal search and investigation, but no wreckage was ever found. Back in France, Glenn's unit arrived safely and, despite the devastating news, continued preparations for a scheduled Christmas broadcast. On December 25th, with the world now informed of Glenn's disappearance, the band performed without him, led by Jerry Gray. It was a somber moment, heavy with uncertainty and sorrow. Glenn's wife, Helen, was notified on December 23rd, and the public announcement followed the next day. The Army officially declared Glenn dead a year and a day after his disappearance, consistent with military procedure. Glenn Miller was posthumously awarded the Bronze Star Medal, and though his body was never recovered, his name is etched into the tablets of the missing at the Cambridge American Cemetery. A memorial headstone also stands in Arlington National Cemetery. Even now, 8 decades later, the mystery of his final flight remains unsolved. Yet his musical legacy endures, echoing across time.